At the end of the day, when people are watching these movies, they're not thinking about the sound. Everybody can notice bad sound, but nobody really mentions or notices good sound. So it's kind of this funny little double-edged sword where if you do your job right, nobody's gonna notice you. But if you do your job wrong, everybody's gonna notice you, and it's gonna be a pretty detrimental problem.
My name is Andrew Jankowski. I own Precursor Productions. We're a recording studio and audio post-production facility. The reality is there's not a lot with sound that we don't do. When we first got into this building, it was actually an old hair salon, and not a nice hair salon. Some hair salons are pretty swanky. This was not one of those. We do everything from audiobooks to film and television to interactive, which would include video games, apps, that sort of thing. Music recording, mixing, and mastering. I mean, the whole gamut of things. We like to be at the forefront of technology here. We were always very focused on computer and digital audio and software-based solutions to audio productions. For the first almost 7 years, people kind of came in here and they thought it was cool, but they're like, what? You got a bunch of computers? There's no mixing board. And then once we saw iPhones and iPads and just that whole smartphone revolution happen, suddenly we saw students and clients coming in and being like, oh yeah, this is like kind of like a bigger, nicer version of what I'm doing on my home or project studio. My dad was a teacher, and he actually taught film and television production. And he had a big stack of Super 8 filmmaker magazines, and I would just read those as a child and be endlessly fascinated. They'd show you how you could use vacuum cleaners to make spaceship sounds and all kinds of, sort of home production techniques.
So Austin, are we recording over there, or are we still getting things set up? I've been working with Andrew at Precursor Productions for almost 5 years now. And what I do here, for the most part, revolves around a lot of dialogue processing, dialogue editing, dialogue recording, as well as a lot of sound effects, sound design, and that sort of realm. The beauty of sound design is there's no wrong way to do it. And if you feel that it brings you to the emotion that you're looking for, then you've done your job properly. That, without a doubt, is my favorite part about this job.
So our original vision and our original dream was to have this sort of like live-work warehouse type space. It kind of functions as our living space for my wife and I, but it's also equally used for the original vision of the studio. So we have meetings, we entertain in this space. In our main studio, it's dark and a little bit dingy and very typical, music recording studio-esque. But in this area, we have something that's a little bit more of an aesthetic. It was intended to be a one-year project, so we signed a one-year lease, and then I remember we signed a two-year lease, and it was really, we were just breaking even the first few years. So it was about 9 years before we really made enough profit that I could see, okay, this is gonna work. It's a long time to not have a lot of cash. If you're really passionate about doing a creative job, you can't measure your success by looking at people that are doing more conventional work. There's no better job than creating. Just love the idea that something that didn't exist in the world before, that we've had a hand in creating it. The audio for some of these products, like an audiobook, is almost the entire process. It's kind of just neat to think, oh yeah, well, we're putting something out in the world that, potentially thousands or even millions of other people are going to consume. And that's kind of exciting. I think you have to be a bit in love with that idea.
What we were trying to achieve here is sort of a ball rolling down a metal track. I had a cookie tin from nachos the night out before, and I have these old little cedar balls, and then I was like, oh, 2 random objects? That's exactly the sound I was looking for. It's kind of a fun process because you get to just dig around your house for weird little knickknacks you didn't even know you owned and get them to make sound. And we ended up using, looks like about 10 different layers to really achieve that final sound. And here's sort of what it all sounds like together. You're never hearing one specific sound. 12 channels, 12 tracks can be just creating the base for one sound. Just looking at the thing, we have gurgle 1, gurgle 2, gurgle 3, gurgle 4, gurgle 5 that are all independently doing something to create this unified gurgle. In everyday life, there's always multiple sound sources that are creating multiple different sounds. In the act of opening a door, you can think of 4 layers that need to be right there. The actual door itself opening, door handle jiggling, the keys jiggling themselves, as well as going into the lock, as well as the lock mechanism, shifting, doing what it does. They all have their own distinct characteristic and sound to it. And when you hear it in the real world, it's all just one unified sound.
If we're recording clothing sounds for like running scenes, you see people really moving their arms when they're running. So you're gonna see more of that kind of sound. And you know, we're gonna have it on screen and we're gonna get like the tempo. We're gonna try and perform it as you see on screen kind of thing. With Foley, if I'm like listening specifically to that sound effect, if I'm able to trick myself, then I think I nailed it at that point.
So on top of making sure that we have sound effects to cover every individual component, you kind of need to think about, well, what is the background noise and the general ambience that exists within the scene? One short film we're currently working on right now, there's about, 10 seconds of northern lights. And well, what do northern lights sound like? So then you can get really creative about, well, what do I think northern lights sound like? And there's, a million and one different ways to go about creating that sound. And my personal favorite is synthesis and sound design. And so I can add some volume on the mixer, and now we just have a simple waveform. And we can get these really sort of crazy sounds by just resampling, repitching it. So the bulk of what I use this for is mostly atmospheric tones, mostly sort of soundscapey things. Most soundscapes can be created pretty effectively with some form of patching on this device.
When I was finishing law school and I was 25 years old, my dad had had cancer for a number of years. He got diagnosed with lymphoma, and I knew what that meant. I basically knew that he had a year to live. He was really looking forward to retirement, to finally have time to play classical guitar many hours a day, to paint, to make furniture, to do all these things that he did, but could never really find enough time to do. And he died at 55 years of age. And I just kind of thought to myself, every time things got really difficult, I'm like, you could plan to do something in retirement, and then you might just never get there. Like, you just don't know. My dad had a great life, and he did a lot of creative things in that life, but he was really hanging on to get to retirement, and he was very close to it, to really put that time in there. And he just never got that opportunity to do it. I wasn't okay with that for myself. I really wanted to try and take that chance to do something creative. And even if I failed, I would have this wonderful experience of having completely 100% worked in a creative field for X number of years.